but I wish I could say no holding back, go ahead and divulge everything, but there is still a lot of stigma around ADHD. There's a lot of misinformation around ADHD. There's a lot of misunderstanding around ADHD. And so I think my best advice is to know your audience before you decide to divulge.
Welcome to Biz Help for You, the show that saves you the expensive learning curve by providing advice from industry experts in every facet of the entrepreneurial journey. Too many small businesses collapse. According to the U.S. Census Bureau, 20% fail within their first year, and less than 35% make it to their 10th anniversary. The goal of this podcast is to change that statistic. So if you're interested in learning more to be a successful entrepreneur, tune in today.
If you're an entrepreneur with ADHD or suspect you might be, this episode is for you. Nearly 30% of entrepreneurs have ADHD, and while that brings creativity, innovation, and bold thinking, it also comes with unique challenges. In today's conversation, ADHD coach Sue Day shares how to work with your brain, not against it, so you can stop being your own worst boss and start building a business that aligns with your strengths. You'll learn how to better focus, build sustainable success, and avoid burnout. So Sue, welcome to the show.
Thanks so much. Really covers all the points, so it's great. Thank you.
Well, I'm glad that you'll be here. Yeah, no, I'm sure some people sometimes are afraid to even admit, that they have ADHD as entrepreneurs. And a lot of times we feel like we have to hide things about ourselves, or people may not want to do business with us, so I'd love for you first to even maybe just touch on that mindset. Like, is that something that people should be ashamed of when they are, talking about being an entrepreneur? Can they be transparent with potential, clients, vendors, things like that? Like, how should they deal with that in terms of being an entrepreneur?
Yeah, so I wish that the answer was, so personally, I think the more we can be open about things, the better, right? But I wish I could say, no holding back, go ahead and divulge everything, but there is still a lot of stigma around ADHD. There's a lot of misinformation around ADHD. There's a lot of misunderstanding around ADHD. And so I think my best advice is to know your audience before you decide to divulge. It is an ADA protected disability. So if you're in a workplace, you can request accommodations. However, again, really hard to make sure that's something that can be enforced. So again, in any situation, I think it's really important to sort of know your audience and know that you're in a place, or be pretty sure that you're in a place where that's going to be dealt with appropriately.
Mm-hmm. So then what do entrepreneurs with ADHD really need to understand about how their brain works, and how can that self-awareness transform their business approach?
Yeah, so that's a really good question. It's a fantastic question. You know that upwards of 30% of entrepreneurs do have ADHD, and that's for a variety of reasons. One is the traditional workplace is really tough for ADHDers, and one is our creative, outside the box, exuberant, excited brains make us really well suited for the lifestyle. That said, it is just as hard to be an entrepreneur as it is to be in the workplace, and I think a lot of people don't quite understand that. And on top of that, we can be our most toxic bosses. So learning how to be kind to ourselves and learning to make sure that we're using our strengths, and perhaps creating supports around our challenges. It's just so important in order to succeed.
Mm-hmm. Well, I know I've met some recently who are entrepreneurs who have said, they have ADHD too. And I think there's this misconception sometimes for some of us that maybe don't have that diagnosis, that hear ADHD and think, oh, it's just hard to focus. You have all these ideas, you have so many things, to do. But she mentioned, like, yes, sometimes I get distracted, things come up. She's like, but then I can hyper focus as well sometimes too. And sometimes I could be so focused that I forget I have other things that I have have to do as well too, so do you have any tips maybe on how to manage, those two opposite things, that you're distracted, but yet you could also hyper focus so much that then you're also missing other things too? Any tips on that?
Yeah. So it's called attention deficit disorder, right? Or attention deficit hyperactivity disorder. But we actually don't have a deficit of attention. We are terrible at, we have a difficult time regulating our attention. So that's where the distracted in one place, hyper focused in another it can be a real challenge. And I think there are so many different sort of tips and tricks around how to work with that. I tend, as an ADHD coach, I tend to go deeper and look at how hyperfocus is, what it's telling us. Like if we're ending up hyper focusing in a way that's not helpful for our business and that's not helpful, that we're not hyper focusing on the right things, then we need to start thinking about, are we using our strengths enough in our world, and are we in danger of getting burnt out? Because I think one thing that happens with hyperfocus is when we're really overwhelmed and stressed, our brains are like, no, I'm going to zone out over here and I'm going to knit 85 small stuffed animals instead of doing this thing that, filing my tax reports or something like that. And so sometimes a hyperfocus is a warning signal, right? Like, okay, if my brain is doing that, then I need to figure out some other way to support myself so that my brain doesn't need to do that. And then when we're working really in our strengths and we have interest-driven brains, right? So our focus is really on our interests. When we're using that muscle and our brains get sort of a rest when we're really working well in our strengths. So knowing what our strengths are, knowing where our passions lie is one of the most important things for both being able to direct our focus, being able to sink into and get out of hyperfocus as we need to, and being able to run a successful business.
So, of course, there's the Pomodoro method. And if those who don't know what that is, that's where you'll say, like, I'm going to spend, let's say, 25 minutes, super focused on a task, and then I take a break, and then I come back and I focus again. Is that something that would be helpful, where they're just going to know, I'm going to focus on this, I'm going to set a timer, right? So I don't get so focused that I lose track of other things. Is that something that's helpful for someone with ADHD, or is that something that maybe could be a hindrance because I'm not able to sit there and focus right now based on this, so I should just wait and see when I have that creative, juice flowing, and then that's when I should do it? Like, how would you recommend someone maybe consider when they should be focusing on something or not?
I think that's a great question. Again, we need to sort of know where our energies lie in the day. Everybody has sort of dips and rises in energy throughout the day. And I think that's even more important as an ADHDer to understand, like, talk to me at 3:00. I can still talk with people and have good meetings and do all those things. But after 3 p.m., if you ask me to do a tax report or something that my brain doesn't want to do, not a good time. I won't do it. I won't do it well. I'll make careless mistakes, whatever. So knowing where, like for me in the morning, that's when I can do the harder things. The things are harder for my brain. And, I do use the Pomodoro method. I have a visual timer so I can see, where, sorry, it's going to go off. I can see where my time is, how my time is going. I only use that when I'm having a really tough time, or when it's really clear that it's helpful. And I guess I wish I could say, I know when it's going to be helpful for everybody and when it's not, but our brains are both all unique and also can be a little bit, we don't like taking orders, not even from ourselves. So when we're like, okay, this is the tool I need right now, and my brain sometimes says, if I'm trying to tell that to myself, my brain says, no, that is not the tool you need right now. I don't care what you think. There's there's a quiz out there. I can't remember what it is, but I'll give it to you afterwards if people want to look at it. It's about personality styles and how well we sort of take direction or how we sort of interact with people. And there's one that's called the rebel. There's 4 personality styles. One is a rebel, and it's you can't tell me what to do, and neither can I. And a lot of us ADHDers have that type of challenge.
Mm-hmm.
So it's really about finding what makes our brain happy and not about trying to force our brain to do something.
Mm-hmm. That makes sense. I mean, really, that's true for anyone, right? Like we all, like you said, we all have the times that we work better than other times. And so really understanding about ourselves and how we work will help us be more effective overall. So I appreciate your sharing that too. I know you said earlier too, that you said a lot of times ADHD diagnosed entrepreneurs also become their harshest critics. They're their worst bosses, and they're critical of themselves. So how can someone break that inner cycle and treat themselves more compassionately?
That is one of the harder chores. And I don't want to say it's a chore. It's a beautiful journey to go on. And my book, I just wrote a book, and the whole first area of exercises is about how to acknowledge our strengths, find them if they're buried, acknowledge them and celebrate them, and stop burying them, because we have so much negative. ADHDers tend to have like 20,000 more negative things said about us by the time we're 10 than people who are neurotypical. It's devastating. We have terrible self-confidence often. We have very low, we don't think that we can succeed in various things. And it can be really devastating. We internalize all of that negative talk as well and start giving it to ourselves. And sometimes that's how we learn how to, especially when we're before we're diagnosed, it's how we learn how to get things done, is to just beat the crap out of ourselves. And so learning how not to do that is super important and so hard. I think it's one of the hardest things. And so that learning how to celebrate our strengths and to not not to say, oh yeah, I'm really good at that. Oh, but other people are really good at that too. Or, oh yeah, I'm really good at that, but only this one time and I failed at that this other times. And so learning how to just say, oh yeah, I'm really good at that, and leaving it there is so important to being able to just start that process of being able to be kind to ourselves. And another phrase that I use, several phrases to help myself and my clients move through these challenges. One is progress, not perfection, right? Perfection does not help us. And that is a phrase that helps everybody in the whole world. Our society is a very perfectionistic society, and going for perfection when it's just not perfect. There isn't anything that's perfect. Nothing is, it just doesn't exist really. It's a concept and construct. And gosh, I forgot. Another part of ADHD is sometimes we lose our chains of thought. So I think that nope, it's gone. I'll let you go.
That's okay. Yeah, no, I mean, I think what you were saying though too, where, we sometimes are so critical of ourselves, and I think that's across the board too. So yes, like you're saying, a lot of people with ADHD may be critical of themselves too. Like, I'm good at this, but, or I messed it up here. But I think just in general, many of us have, where we're looking at others, we're, looking up to them, and we're measuring ourselves against them. And we might be judging ourselves against someone who's been in the journey even longer, right? So if we're looking at our success against theirs, and maybe they've been doing it for 20 years and we've been doing it for 5, right? We're not necessarily going to have the same level of success. So I think being kind to ourselves, no matter if we have a diagnosis or not, is something of importance to everyone, really.
Absolutely. And though I do believe there's a big difference between people with ADHD and without ADHD, everybody, especially in the society, that we're these fast-paced, information-driven all the time, we all have some pretty significant ADHD traits that that we have to grapple with. So basically, I wrote this book for ADHDers, but I've had several non-ADHDers say, "Oh, that actually is so helpful for me too." So ADHD tips can really work for everybody. And I did remember what my at least the last phrase that I wanted to point out is giving ourselves grace in a way that so I was always taught not to say I can't, right?
Hmm.
Of course I can do everything. And my mother was a really growth focused person. And but learning to say I can't right now and being okay with that is really helpful to me. Like understanding like 3 o'clock, if I have taxes to do, it's going to happen tomorrow. I just can't do that right now. So giving myself that grace and understanding that my brain works in that way is really important to being a kinder person to myself.
Well, while you were talking to, I was thinking, I bet there are a lot of people out there that actually have ADHD that haven't been diagnosed yet. They could be, adults in their 30s, 40s, 50s even, and never really had a diagnosis, and maybe sometimes still struggle as entrepreneurs. So, is there anything that you could tell those people that maybe they really are struggling, they don't have that diagnosis yet, maybe what they could do to determine, like, do I really have ADHD, or is this just I just have a lot of energy, or sometimes I have a hard time focusing in general, understand my question,
Yes, I do. And actually, it's really important. People for a long time didn't think women had ADHD, right? But we do. Until the early 2000s, the DSM didn't even, the American Psychiatric Association didn't even think adults could have ADHD. So there's a huge underdiagnosis. And I know you see a lot in the media and the news about overdiagnosis. It's not true. There are bad players out there that are feeding on this sort of frenzy of understanding more about ADHD, and that they need to watch out for them. But it is not true. ADHD is underdiagnosed. The World Health Organization believes that almost 85% of the adults with ADHD are not diagnosed with ADHD. So
that's a huge number.
It is a huge number. It is huge. And so please, if you think you may have ADHD, please do look into it and see ADHD is not something it's a serious trait. I don't believe personally that it's a disability in our current society. Yes, I believe that we have so many strengths and so much to offer our society that with accommodations, we can be the most amazing contributors to the world. And I think our world really needs us right now, and our creative thinking and our outside of the box movement. That said, it is really hard to live with ADHD in this society. And it takes more lifespan off of us than smoking. So we have a 9 to 11% decrease in life expectancy than the sort of standard population. That's higher than smoking, and that's for a lot of reasons. We have addiction issues, we have depression issues, we have a lot of comorbidity, co-occurring disorders that happen along with it, and that a lot of things are really stress related. So if we manage our ADHD, then we can really manage some of the negative aspects of what can happen with the ADHD. So sorry for going on that little bit of a rabbit hole, but and I will send. I don't have the resource right now, but in the show notes, can I email you with a good place to sort of start? Take a little assessment, a good assessment, and to give you sort of an idea and a boost to like start talking to professionals if you think you haven't.
So definitely, that's the purpose of this episode too, is really education and helping, whether it's someone who knows they have ADHD or maybe they're not yet aware, so definitely we'll share resources for those who are interested. So I know you said earlier too, they could be their worst critic, and, there's some, things that they could do to themselves because of the ADHD, and that's one of the pitfalls. But are there other pitfalls that you have seen that those with ADHD should be watching out for? And if so, how could they avoid those pitfalls, or at least make them less of an issue?
Yeah. So if you follow ADHD in the media and these sort of flippant reels that are often out there, there is one that comes through that is so true. ADHD tax is real. Like, we are often very bad at doing things that save us money. So we often overbuy our groceries and things go bad because we have the best intentions and then they fade away, and we always want to do everything and we can't. So, get support when you need support. I think it is less expensive than what might happen if you don't get that support. And I know that sounds really impossible to a lot of people, and I totally understand that. And so if you can't pay for support when you need to pay for support, there's so many tools out there. So find some free support that you create some tools for yourself, because we need support to function in this society in the way that we need to function. And then burnout hits us hard and fast because we're interested in everything. We want to do everything. We're excited about everything. And we really think we should be able to do everything. And we beat the crap out of ourselves if we can't. So it hits hard and fast for us. So learning how to understand, for one, how to take care of yourself so you can prevent it as much as possible. And then also learning the signs for if you're becoming burnt out and like, okay, need to take a step back. Let me figure out something else for some ways to prevent this from happening. Because burnout, I went through some really significant burnout, and I was lucky with mine, but sometimes it can cause some really significant health and issues. So I found out, that I was burnt out. We're not very good at paying attention to our own feelings. I didn't really understand that I was burnt out until I got laid off. And then I realized that I had been running a high temperature for over a year. My muscles and my joints ached. I was exhausted all the time. I wasn't able to do any of the things that I love to do. And I realized way late in the game that I was burnt out. And it took 2 years, maybe, to really feel fairly recovered from that. And I still have things I'm struggling with. I'm still working on finding ways to do the things that I love and find methods to help me get all of my sort of ducks in a row, and in a way that I don't continuously get burnt out. So it's a long journey. If you end up in that hole, it's a long journey out. So anything you can do to prevent that, in self-care and really understanding where your energies lie and working in your strengths, is so important.
So I have maybe like a two-pronged question then too about leadership as, an entrepreneur too. So many who are listening have team, and I would love, my first part of the question is, if you do have ADHD and you have to lead a team, do you have any tips on maybe how they could do that effectively? And then the opposite side of that question is, if we are leading team and someone on our team has ADHD, how can we best manage them as well?
Those are big questions. So I'll do as much of an overview as I can. It's complicated and hard. One of the things that a lot of people don't know about ADHD is and this probably plays into all parts of being an entrepreneur, we have some pretty significant emotional regulation issues that we need to be careful of. And that sometimes leads to both the hypercritical of ourselves and the world being hypercritical of us, leads to also this real sensitivity to, or they call it rejection sensitivity dysphoria. So we can perceive rejection really quickly and react to it not always very well. And so if you're a leader, you need to figure out how to manage that and not take it out on your staff. That's a really, really, and you need to do that in relationships outside of work too. It's one of the biggest killers of relationships in ADHD is this highly volatile emotional response, along with this extreme sensitivity to any feelings of rejection. So that's the biggest thing to really manage as a leader with ADHD. And then trying to figure out how to be organized, dropping the perfectionism, and allowing your staff to step up and do the work they need to do, the work you hired them to do. All of those things I think are struggles for every manager. For an ADHDer, when we're super hyper, we're hyper focused, we really, and we can get really sort of on a path. Sometimes I call myself a bulldozer.
Mm.
It's not a great tool to use when you're in a team environment, the bulldozer tool. So learning how to sort of do things with a little more finesse. My brain works a lot faster in a lot of ways, and there's plenty of ways where it works slower. I'm not saying that I'm like so much more quick than other people, but sometimes in meetings and stuff, I get really impatient with how slowly idea generation is coming on, because my brain is like ideas, and so learning how to sort of temper myself there as well is really important. There's a lot of work, and it's worth it. I think we can be fabulous leaders. We're creative. We're loving. We have a wonderful sense of justice and fairness that is developed over time, and it's an interesting. That's an actual trait of ADHD and autism. There's this outsized sense of justice and fairness. So that can use all of those things can be used either for the good or for bad. And so it's a lot of work to just learn how to manage all of those things in a positive way. As far as working with an ADHDer and being their manager, ask them what they need and help and believe them when they tell you, because it may be different than what you expect, and sort of work gently through that. I think, again, with the RSD, the rejection sensitivity, coaching is a much easier, much more efficient way to manage, I think, probably for everybody, but for folks with ADHD, instead of like being directive and saying, you did this right, you didn't do this right, you did this right, you didn't do this right. Oh, I see you did this. How do you feel about it? What was meaningful about how is there anything you learned through that? And so really sort of coaching people through their work instead of dictating is a big important part of being a manager of somebody with ADHD.
Well, this has been a fabulous discussion. I know there's probably so much more we could talk about, but we are coming to the end of the time that we have together today. So I wanted to ask, do you have an offer that you would like to extend to our listeners? And if our listeners want more information, or, there's some other things that they wanted to find out from you, how can they contact you?
So I do have an offer, and I will send it to you in a follow-up email. It is I haven't figured out the app yet, so I don't have an online quiz, but I'm working towards it. But I have a burnout quiz. So like, how close are you to burnout? And then a little write-up about what you can do around that. And so I'll send you the PDF of that. As far as reaching out to me, I think the best way to do it is through my website, which is pathwaysforwardcoaching.com. There you can I offer a free discovery call to anybody who's interested. So you can, spend half an hour, 45 minutes with me talking about what your needs are and figure out if we would be a good fit to coach together. There you can also find a tab where it talks about my book and ADHD Brilliance. It's called ADHD Brilliance, a journey into your extraordinary brain. And there's a tab there where you can order that book. And all of my services. I also offer free group coaching every Thursday, and free body doubling. We didn't talk about body doubling, but what a great tool it is for productivity with ADHD. So I do a free body doubling every Friday. So I will give you links to all of that for the show notes, but you can find everything also through pathwaysforwardcoaching.com.
Perfect. Well, thank you, Sue, for being a guest on my show today. I really appreciate your having this conversation with me and being willing, to talk about this situation, because I think, like you said, a lot of times people feel embarrassed if they have had a diagnosis, don't necessarily want to share. And so you're talking about your own situation and helping others, I think, is going to be very effective. So thank you so much.
Yeah, I hope so. And thank you so much. What great questions. I really enjoyed our conversation.
Wonderful. Well, to you, the listener, as well, if you enjoyed today's topic and you want to hear additional information, you can find access to exclusive content in the show notes. Thank you for tuning in today. Would you please share this episode with those you know and leave a review on your favorite platform? And if you find our show informative, Would you consider being a financial sponsor to help me continue my mission to educate business owners? A link is located in the episode description, and no amount is too small. I'd really appreciate your support. If you are interested in connecting with our guest and receiving the offer they had to share, a link to our resource page is in the show notes. Finally, if you have any bookkeeping or payroll needs, reach out to us at 310-534-5577 or contact@abandp.com. My team and I are eager to assist you. Until next time, have a great day.
Thank you for listening to Biz Help for You. Please join your host, Candy Messer, again next time. Have a terrific day.